Aliens have invaded Earth and created an anomalous zone where people turn into plants. A group of scientists in protective suits interrogates biology professor Lena in a secure facility. Lena was part of a mission into the anomalous zone, called the Shimmer, but no one else returned. The Shimmer formed after a meteorite struck an old lighthouse somewhere on the US coast, and since then, the affected area has been expanding. Scientist Lomax asks Lena what she ate while in the Shimmer, noting they only had 2 weeks' worth of supplies, yet she was there for almost 4 months. Confused and disoriented, Lena doesn't remember what she ate and thinks she was only in the Shimmer for days or weeks. Lomax also asks what happened to her colleagues, but she can't give a clear answer, assuming none of them survived. The scene shifts to some time earlier. Lena is teaching at a university, explaining the principle of cell division to her medical students. After the lecture, Lena meets with her colleague and lover, Dan. He invites her to a barbecue on Saturday, but she declines, explaining that she needs to repaint her bedroom. Lena's husband disappeared about a year ago, and she feels guilty seeing Dan. Dan assures her that she's not disrespecting her husband's memory, but Lena still refuses the invitation. Over the weekend, Lena recalls the happiest moments of her life with her husband and can't hold back her tears. Pulling herself together, she gathers the necessary supplies and begins painting the dark walls white. Suddenly, her husband Kane appears in the bedroom doorway. He had been serving in the US Army Special Forces and went missing during a secret mission. Lena can't believe her eyes and tearfully embraces her husband, but his reaction to their long-awaited reunion seems strange. Later, Lena questions Kane about what happened, but he can't say where he was or how long he was there. Frustrated, Lena is convinced he's hiding something and asks him to tell her the truth. Kane insists it doesn't matter and admits he only remembers ending up in their bedroom doorway. Suddenly, Kane feels unwell, and Lena immediately calls for an ambulance. Kane's condition worsens, but on the way to the hospital, the ambulance is stopped by an armed squad that takes Lena and Kane to a secret base. Some time later, Lena regains consciousness in a hospital room, where she is greeted by psychologist Dr. Ventress. Lena is disoriented and asks about Kane's condition, but Ventress instead confirms that Lena served in the army for 7 years and is now a university professor. Lena persists in asking about Kane, but Ventress counters with questions about Kane's sudden reappearance after being missing for so long. Finally, Ventress informs her that Kane is also at the facility, but his condition is dire, with all his organs gradually failing. Lena speculates that a virus or radiation Kane encountered during his mission could be responsible. Soon, Lena steps out of her room onto a balcony and realizes that the base is situated right next to the Shimmer. Then, Lena has another conversation with Ventress, this time in her office. The psychologist explains that no one really knows what the Shimmer is or how it works. Theories range from a religious apocalypse to an extraterrestrial attack or a higher dimension, but there is no evidence to support any of these assumptions. Ventress informs Lena that the Shimmer surrounded the lighthouse 3 years ago. An inspector volunteered to investigate but never returned. Since then, information about the Shimmer has been classified, and authorities have sent in equipment, animals, and even people, but nothing has come back. The main problem is that the Shimmer is rapidly expanding. In a couple of months, it will reach their base, and eventually, it could engulf the entire planet. Somehow, Kane managed to escape the Shimmer, but he doesn't have long to live. Lena realizes she knows too much about this classified project and won't be allowed to leave. However, she doesn't want to leave, she wants to stay with her husband. Later, Lena recalls her life before Kane disappeared. One morning, she questions him about his next mission, suspecting it's more serious than all the other previous missions since no one talks about it. She asks Kane to at least hint at where they are going, but he says nothing and changes the subject. That evening at the secret base, Lena meets paramedic Anya Thornton, who introduces her to the other women, physicist Josie Roddick and geomorphologist Cass Shepard. The women explain they have been working at the base for several months, studying the Shimmer. They also reveal they are preparing for a new expedition into the anomalous zone, led by Dr. Ventress. Unlike the previous military expedition, this time the authorities decided to send scientists into the Shimmer. Driven by curiosity, Lena asks what is really happening inside the Shimmer, and Anya gives her a rather unsettling response.
1, something kills them. 2, they go crazy and kill each other.
The others note that one sergeant did manage to return, referring to Kane. However, Lena decides not to mention that Kane is her husband. The next day, Lena meets with Dr. Ventress again and asks why she wants to enter the Shimmer. Ventress admits that she is tired of just watching people disappear and the zone expand. She wants to find out what's inside for herself. Suddenly, Lena says she wants to go with them, hoping to find a way to help Kane. Some time later, the group of 5 female scientists, armed, heads towards the Shimmer. The next morning, Lena wakes up in her tent and steps out to join the others. She confesses that she feels disoriented and doesn't remember anything after they entered the zone. The other women say they have the same experience, and judging by their reduced food supplies, they've been in the shimmer for several days. Meanwhile, Josie checks their equipment and reports that the radio, navigator, and camera work fine, but anything that sends signals outside is broken. They are now without communication, coordinates, or bearings. However, Cass remains optimistic. She suggests they navigate by the clock and head south. This way, they can reach the ocean and then follow the perimeter along the shore. Ventress points out that they shouldn't have expected communication, as none of the previous expeditions managed to contact them from inside the shimmer. Having determined their direction, the group sets off. Soon, they reach a river and an abandoned building. Before moving on, they decide to examine the house. Nearby, Josie notices a variety of flowers and admires their beauty, though Lena finds them peculiar. On closer inspection, Lena realizes that all the different flowers are growing from a single branch, indicating a strange mutation. In the house, Josie doesn't find anything interesting, but suddenly,
no, it's been long abandoned, maybe even before.
The other women immediately rush to help Josie out of the half-flooded house and pull her from the water, then move away from the house. They don't understand what happened, but Lena mentions she saw some kind of creature in the water. Suddenly, a giant albino alligator emerges from the house, clearly intent on attacking the women. Lena opens fire, but it only stops after taking a couple dozen point-blank shots. Lena decides to examine the alligator. When she opens its mouth, she sees that the mutant reptile has far more teeth than it should, and they look like shark teeth. Lena can't understand how this could be possible, as two different species couldn't have crossbred. Meanwhile, during an interrogation, Lena tells Lomax that initially, the mutations in everything living were barely noticeable, but the closer they got to the lighthouse, the more radical they became. Lomax suggests these might have been hallucinations, but Lena points out that all 5 of them saw the same things, which means it was all real. In the shimmer, the women finally cross the river using boats they found near the house. Suddenly, Lena feels a pain in her arm but realizes it's just a bruise from the encounter with the alligator. Cass notices that Lena is an excellent shot and learns that Lena served in the army for 7 years. Cass also asks whose picture Lena carries in her locket. Lena replies that it's a photo of her husband, whom she met in the army and who is now deceased. Cass understands that the loss of her husband is what motivated Lena to enter the shimmer voluntarily. She shares that each of them has problems that brought them to this dangerous place. Anya doesn't drink anymore, implying she had an addiction. Josie wears long sleeves to hide scars on her wrists, and Cass herself lost her daughter to leukemia. Nothing specific is known about Ventress, but everyone knows she has no friends, husband, or children. Soon, the women find an abandoned building that used to be a military base before it was swallowed by the shimmer. They discover new mutations on the walls of the building.
They're everywhere.
Malignant. Like tumors.
The team decides to settle in an old dining hall, but suddenly they see beds and bags. For a moment, they think someone else is there, but then realize the belongings are from the previous expedition. Soon, Lena notices a board listing the names of the previous expedition members, including Kane. She believes the board was used to track guard shifts and suggests they should guard the perimeter as well. Then Ventress finds a memory card left by the previous expedition on a table. On the video, the women see a soldier's stomach being cut open while still alive, and his intestines move like a creepy separate entity. Anya thinks it was just a trick of the light, but Cass disagrees, saying the intestines looked more like some kind of worm. Lena steps away from the others, trying to process what she saw. Noticing her absence, the rest of the women follow her and soon find themselves in an abandoned swimming pool. There, they discover the corpse of the soldier with the cut-open stomach, which is almost entirely turned into a plant. Horrified, Josie says she doesn't want to stay there overnight, but Ventress points out that they have no choice. At night, Lena examines the mutated samples they found, then goes to Ventress, who is on guard duty and planning the next route. Ventress tells Lena she did the right thing by not telling the others that Kane is her husband, as it's unclear how they would react after seeing the video. Lena asks how Kane explained his desire to join a hopeless mission, but Ventress only responds that everyone has a tendency towards self-destruction to some extent, and this was the path Kane chose. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a strange sound coming from the forest. Cass hears it too and runs outside to join Lena and Ventress, who are peering into the darkness with their weapons ready. Suddenly, a mutant bear appears nearby, grabs Cass, and drags her into the forest. Lena, Anya, and Josie rush to help Cass, but they can't save her. Later, Anya and Josie suggest they should head back since their group has been attacked twice already and the previous team seemed to have gone mad. However, Ventress is convinced that reaching the lighthouse will reveal the nature of the shimmer. The others believe they can study the shimmer using photos and videos, but Ventress is determined to reach the lighthouse at any cost, even if the others refuse. Anya and Josie don't want to follow the emotionless Ventress, who seemed unaffected by what happened to Cass. Initially, Lena agrees with them but then points out that it took them about 6 days to reach the base, and they only have 2 days left to reach the ocean, so it makes more sense to head to the coast and follow the perimeter. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Lomax asks Lena why she convinced everyone to keep going. Lena claims it was Ventress's decision, but Lomax reveals that Ventress had cancer and had nothing to lose. Lena admits she had strong suspicions about it but still decided to continue. In the Shimmer, the group finds themselves in even more mutated thickets and sees unusual deer with antlers covered in flowers. Lena decides to explore deeper into the mysterious forest and soon discovers Cass's body with a torn throat. Lena returns to the others, and they continue onward. After a while, the women arrive in an abandoned village and decide to stay in one of the houses for the night, as it's still 2 hours to the coast. Near the house, the women find plants that have taken human shapes. Upon closer inspection, Josie realizes that in the Shimmer, light and radio waves are not blocked but refracted. Signals don't disappear but mix, and the same thing happens with DNA. The genes that determine body structure and physical form mutate, causing all living organisms, including themselves, to change.
The Shimmer is a prism, but it refracts everything.
Late at night, Lena takes samples from herself and examines them, trying to determine if any irreversible changes have begun in her body. She then attempts to sleep. In the middle of the night, Anya wakes everyone up and, in a fit of paranoia, ties the women to chairs. She has seen Kane's photo in Lena's locket and now demands an explanation for why Lena didn't tell them earlier. Anya then speculates about what's happening in the Shimmer. They had two theories, one that someone is destroying everyone who enters, and another that they are destroying each other. After 2 attacks, the first theory seems more likely, but she points out that only Lena and Ventress saw the bear, so it might not have existed. Desperate, Anya suddenly starts crying, saying she feels something moving in her hands. She is also afraid to untie Lena, Josie, and Ventress, fearing they might do to her what Kane did to his comrade in the video. In a frenzy, Anya begins threatening the women, but is interrupted by a strange noise outside. Then she hears Cass's screams and runs outside, where the bear immediately attacks her. The bear then enters the house and sniffs the tied-up women, emitting human screams from its throat. Anya, still alive, returns to the house and tries to shoot the bear, but it only enrages the creature, which then tears apart her face. In the chaos, Josie manages to free herself, grab a weapon, and shoots the enraged mutant bear, finally killing it. After recovering from the ordeal, Ventress starts gathering her belongings, determined to continue to the coast immediately. She feels their bodies and minds are already beginning to deteriorate and believes they don't have time to wait. Ventress leaves, while Lena and Josie decide to wait until dawn. In the morning, Josie wonders how Kane managed to stay in the Shimmer for about a year and return seemingly unharmed, but Lena suspects something did happen to him. Lena reveals she has already found mutated cells in her body, confirming Josie's theory about the refraction of DNA. Josie admits it was terrifying to hear Cass's screams coming from the bear's mouth. She suspects part of Cass's consciousness became part of the mutant during the attack. Josie then looks at her hand, from which sprouts are beginning to grow, and walks into the thickets. Lena follows her and sees that Josie has already turned into a flowering plant. Soon, Lena reaches the coast alone, where she finds dozens of crystalline trees growing. Instead of heading to the exit of the Shimmer, Lena heads toward the lighthouse. Inside the lighthouse, Lena discovers Kane's charred corpse and a video camera. On the recording, Kane confesses to someone off-screen that he has lost his mind and can't continue living like this. He decides to end his life and asks the person to find Lena after he's gone. He then detonates a phosphorus grenade in his hands. After the explosion, Kane's interlocutor appears on the screen, revealing himself to be Kane's double who indeed found Lena. Shaken, Lena turns off the camera and notices a hole in the ground, created by the meteorite's impact. Lena hears voices from the cave and decides to venture inside. There she finds Ventress, who tells her that she finally discovered what is inside the lighthouse. It is something completely unlike humans, and it has already settled within her, growing until it absorbs everything. Now, all living organisms face decay, annihilation. Suddenly, a bright beam of light bursts from Ventress's mouth, and soon she disintegrates into countless tiny particles. Lena watches in awe as her eyes begin to glow. Then the particles from Lena's body transform into a pulsating fractal formation with a bright core. Lena continues to stare into the fractal, and it extracts a red drop from her, which immediately starts to divide into numerous cells. The fractal then transforms into a horrifying humanoid figure. Lena shoots at it, but the bullets have no effect. In terror, Lena runs out of the cave to the surface, but the humanoid is already there, waiting for her. Lena notices that this humanoid mimics her every movement. She attempts to flee the lighthouse, but the humanoid intercepts her, pinning her against the wall and nearly merging with her. The creature mimics her movements and begins to adopt her appearance. Shocked, Lena finds another phosphorus grenade among Kane's belongings and places it in the hands of her double. She pulls the pin and runs outside. The resulting explosion engulfs the lighthouse and the surrounding area in flames, burning all the mutated plants. After Lena finishes her story, Lomax asks who the double was and what it wanted, but Lena says she doesn't know. Lomax wants to understand why the alien came to Earth and why it was destroying their environment. Lena points out that it wasn't destroying but was changing everything, creating something new. Lomax informs her that their team reached the lighthouse and confirmed that the Shimmer has burned down. Finally, Lena inquires about her husband, and Lomax informs her that his health has started to improve since the anomalous zone vanished. Lena goes to the room where her husband's double is. She asks if he really isn't Kane. He confirms that he is indeed someone else and asks Lena the same question. She doesn't answer, but as they embrace, we see a strange shimmer in both Kane's and Lena's eyes. What do you think caused the shimmer to appear on Earth? And do you think it could come back in the future? Share your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.